Welcome back, viewers, to Drawing Comics. I'm your host. I will be drawing comics from this beautiful piece of work by John Buscema. We are moving along. Don't want to move too far ahead to the moment where Conan is discovered for infiltrating the cultist and his cult meeting. So he's been caught, he's been lashed, and he is about to be crucified in a desert. And this is what is going on right here. This psychopath is telling this guy to do his dirty work. It's like brainwashing these dudes to do crazy stuff. And they're listening. As you can see in the next panel, his bidding has been done. So just, it is that time of the week. I do want to do a quick review. Some people might ask, like, what's the point? Why are you drawing from comics? What's really going on over here? Are you just trying to be exactly like this comic book artist? And the answer to that is absolutely not. I love the illustration. I think it's beautiful work. I really like John Buscema's work. What is going on here, you guys? Hold on 1 second. Seems like the frame is frozen, but it could be just the app. Gonna need to do a quick restart because it seems like it's frozen. 1 second. OBS and your malfunctioning app. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, so just going back to the question, why draw from comics? Well, first of all, I think for me it's more of a personal thing of just like reading. When you pick up the story and you read the book, you're not actually trying to be the writer, right? You're just reading what they're creating, what they're making you in your imagination create as they tell the story. So this is kind of similar. I'm just getting into the characters that they're creating physically and drawing out the panels, getting into the scene, and creating them on paper, the same way you would create the images that the writer is creating in your mind. So it's just a similar experience. I'm just getting more into the creative process by copying it and also learning from it. I feel like regardless of what your skill level is, there's always something to learn. There's always something that you could take away from other artists or other pieces of work or references or drawing from life or any of that. You could always improve and get better. So this isn't so much as copying it and trying to be exactly like them. In fact, I don't want that. I enjoy having my own style and doing my own things. but I do think that there are benefits to learning from them, such as, for this example, understanding anatomy better. You know, as you're drawing these comics, you're understanding all the processes. You're figuring out how do you tell the story from panel to panel, and what kind of camera angles are you supposed to have. Like, for example, this is like a distant shot, right? A front shot. And it's giving you like an overview of the scene. Then there's more of like a 3/4 shot from a distance. Then there's one that's up close. Then literally bird's eye view. You know, so all these camera angles are really beneficial in pretty much any style or whatever it is that you're drawing. Just ways to tell the story in a compelling manner so that it's not redundant. You're not seeing the same sort of, you know, face, then another face, then a face, then another face. You know, just boring kind of or repetitive ways of telling story from page to page. You want to avoid that. And drawing from comics, you get to pick that up. You know, you get to pick up all these things that improve your comic book work. But not only that, you're also figuring out how to draw emotions, how to draw body and face expressions. You know, what sort of emotion is conveyed at this moment, and just paying attention to all these things, not exactly as they are, but just these general concepts, these general ideas. You know, you want to have a certain emotion invoked. You, for the viewer, for the readers to get as excited or as terrified or frightened or whatever it is, you know, getting into the characters by creating these things. So it really helps to figure that out through drawing these panels, drawing from these comic book legends. You're picking up multiple things. So as you're learning it, you're doing all these things, and you're not so much worried about working from your imagination just yet. It's just having to practice all these different elements that would be overwhelming if you're just learning comics, or if you're just starting out, or it just becomes intimidating where you're just like, I don't know how to tell this scene, you know, I don't know how to create this scene, or, you know, how do you draw this emotion, or how do you draw this face expression or this angle, you know. So by doing this, you get to understand the process as well. So aside from really getting into the comic book itself, or the comic book artists themselves, as I mentioned earlier, you get to have all these multiple benefits. You know, you're practicing things like drawing lightly, because you have to. If you're drawing within a panel, you have to make sure everything fits within the panel before you get into the nitty-gritty details. Otherwise, you're gonna have to erase all that detail, all that time and effort put into it, to redo it all over again. So you're practicing to sketch lightly, you're practicing the anatomy, you're practicing the camera angles, the emotions, the body language, drawing different things within the panels. Like, for instance, you know, you're drawing a vulture there, you're drawing a tree, you know, you're drawing stones and putting in details into that. And all that helps when it comes to your own work, when you have space to fill. You know, how do you draw this? How do you draw these boxes and not make it look really basic and boring? You know, so you study it in other panels, you draw it from references, you draw it from life. But these comics do provide you with ways that you could improve your own panel work as well. You know, you're drawing different things that otherwise you might not have considered when working from imagination or working from something else. So multiple benefits, all these things. You're also thinking about how do I fit everything into the frame? How do I, how do I actually make sure that all the panels are right on the page? All the frames of the panels fit in on a page. And what's best to do? Is it better to first draw out all the frames for the panels for the page, the entire page, and then get into each panel? Or is it better to do one panel, move on to the next one, so on and so forth? So you're tackling all these things by drawing from comics. So I highly encourage you, if you're just starting out in drawing comics, if you're interested in learning how to draw comics, if you're interested in just improving your drawing in general, look at all these multiple benefits that you get. You get to practice your hand-eye coordination by drawing out all these panels and drawing out all these challenging parts of the comic book. So all this comes from practicing from them. Now, if you're going to take it and then you're going to try to sell it and you're going to say it's your work, that's a whole different topic, my friend. That's you really taking the wrong turn. It's going to disfavor you in the long run and, discredit you as a comic book artist in a lot of different ways. But yeah, this is just a couple of things. There's many more, but just a brief overview of why it's important to draw from comics. So pick a comic book you like, pick an artist that you like, talk about them, keep their work alive, encourage other people to look at the work and admire their work. I think in a lot of instances, people kind of speed through comics. They'll read the story, they'll take a look at the art briefly, and they'll just move on to the next panel or page. But this opportunity gives you a chance to really appreciate the artist. What makes a comic book a comic book? It's that's what differentiates a comic book from a novel or a regular book. Is the artist, is the illustration. So drawing from the comic book also really makes it more of an intimate experience with your favorite artist, with your favorite comic book. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I will do these brief little reviews as to why from time to time, because I feel like it's good inspiration, good reminder for people to appreciate comic books more, and illustrators especially to really dive into the illustrations themselves, be more familiar with the artists themselves. This is also another big reason why I really like working from this, is because I think that John Buscema really deserves way more recognition. He's a legend. I mean, a lot of people know about him. A lot of people in the industry are aware of his work and his contribution to comics. I just want to keep that alive, and I didn't see that much info about him. There's very limited info, despite the fact that he is such a huge influence on Marvel, all the different comics that he's done, all the different characters that he's drawn from Marvel, and just beautiful work in general. Especially their issues in Silver Surfer that are amazing. And if you guys missed the first episode of Drawing Comics, check it out. There's going to be there's a 5-minute reel there talking about John Buscema, talking about his life, him progressing into becoming a comic book artist in Marvel, and showing some sketches that haven't really been publicized as often, or aren't as out in the open for viewers. So just some cool little images there. Beautiful work, masterfully, skillfully done. You will definitely enjoy it. All right. So with that said, let's jump in to this panel right before Conan gets crucified by crazy people. gonna be a pretty quick panel. Most of the work is already done. Just want to make sure detail that I like is there. If you guys want to see, if you're just tuning in, if this is your first stream, if you guys want to see more of my personal work, stuff that isn't comics related, isn't copying comics, I have a project stream, and that's at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, where I just do different stuff. Not necessarily comics, but isn't ruling them out. Maybe in some point in the future I will be doing some like personal comics that come from my imagination. And that's kind of the goal of it. Just gonna do a quick scan before moving on to the next panel. I'm pretty satisfied with this. And it is time to move on to this big moment. I think it's going to be a challenge. going to be a narrow panel. And I think it's going to come down to, what do I want to do with this space right here? Should I come back to it and just fill it up with like, yeah, you know, why not? I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to come back to it and like fill it up with either figure drawings or hand drawings or feet drawings or something. And viewers in the basics class can take a look and see these cool panels. Problem solved. And same thing for the bottom panel, because this isn't going to be such a high panel. The frame for this panel is pretty narrow. Just going to do a quick measurement there. So I'm going to say it's like 7 inches. This is 4. So it's 3 inches different. This is 10, so this should be a 7. Done. And now we just connect this. So quick little trick there, if you're working with different size panels, you measure the previous panel, previous to the new panel, in the reference, you and then you measure the new panel in a reference, and note the difference in height or width, whatever it is that you're measuring. Then do the same thing here. So for example, here was 3 inches difference between this measurement and this measurement, so it should be 3 inches difference in this measurement. And that just ensures similar size. So all along this, I'm gonna probably do like hands and feet. Same thing here, to just fill up the page as much as possible. This has been my goal, just to show you guys, for those who are new to the stream, for those just tuning in, the goal of this entire sketchbook was to fill every single part of the page from top to bottom as much as possible. And for most of it, that's been the case. There's been some pages where I could have done better, you know, like here. Should fill that up at some point as well. But pretty much most of the page. Yeah, now that I'm seeing it, there's this space. There's this space that I can fill up. So I will be coming back to them for the sake of filling up pages. But yeah, for the most part, every single page is covered completely. And I highly encourage you to do the same. Yeah, I think you'll feel really good about yourself and the amount of work that you put into every sketchbook. You'll get used to actually drawing objects next to each other without having that fear of like, oh no, I'm gonna ruin the page, you know, it's possibly gonna be a masterpiece. Have a sketchbook just for sketches, you know, just draw for the sake of getting better in those sketchbooks. It really is something, you know, I'm making a joke about it, but that's something that I've experienced as well. I'm sure a lot of artists out there also are a little too precious about certain pages, you know, and not really taking the time to just really use it up, you know, get it dirty. That's what it's there for. That's why it's a sketchbook. And just get another one for more final work, you know, on days where you feel like really creating a final piece, like a big piece or whatnot, just have a sketchbook for that. And that way it's going to take away the anxiety of like ruining a sketchbook with like terrible drawings in there, and just have one dedicated to sketching things out. Now, I don't think this is going to be in any way easy. And I predict that it'll have some challenging it's nowhere. The challenge is it's nowhere as wide. Like this is nowhere. It's almost 14 inches. So it's double. So the difference between this panel and this panel is 8 inches. Whereas this is 7. Plus 8 should be 15 inches. So I'm missing a good chunk here. Which is going to make the tree look a lot closer than it should be. I'm not going to get that wide angle or wide shot. So there's two things that I could do here. I can either start a new page and actually make a really wide one, or just draw the tree smaller. And that way I can get, I can make it look like it's really out in the distance. I'm gonna try the latter. The problem is that there are certain branches that I'm gonna have to work from imagination. Oh boy. Must be even smaller than that. What to do? What to do? Let's see. Still amazing. Like, look at that, right? Like, it's so small, and he's still able to nail down like the anatomy there and just the muscles that show up on him. I think that's so cool. tiny little figure, but is able to just portray this idea of like still a muscular guy out in the distance. Skillful, so skillful. And there's still a face on there too. Like you could still see his eyes as well. I just really admire the little detail that goes in there. So as I'm drawing this, I'm still keeping in mind, like, it's challenging because it's so small, so it's hard to tell if the anatomy is right, but you could still judge it. Like, as I'm drawing, I'm still keeping in mind, like, okay, they're supposed to be really small hands, and I'm giving them some sort of definition, but is the hand bigger than the head? It's not supposed to be. You know, so when I do notice it, I'm like, oh, brace it. It's gonna look stupid. It's gonna look like he has huge mittens for hands. You know, it's better to do it right than also looking at the width of the arm. It's supposed to be half a head, so it's not supposed to be really wide looking. Now, granted, this is a little bit more challenging because I'm not drawing on comic book paper. Comic book paper is like 14 by 17. So, and the panels are much bigger in that case. You know, when they were drawing this, they were using comic book paper, and then it was scanned to fit the size of newspaper print. Or photographed, rather. I'm not sure, actually. Like, these were made in the 80s or 70s, so they might have had scanners then, but the old technique was to actually get them photographed. That was the technique and for the like 30s comics. Late 20s, 30s. Oh, which brings it up. If you guys missed it yesterday, was a special intro. It was a different one where I introduced Alex Raymond, Flash Gordon, the creator Flash Gordon, and I talked about him briefly, talked about his accomplishments, talked about the times, and he was when he was creating Flash Gordon, you know, the 30s, and what other comic books were around during that period. So if you missed that one, I highly encourage you to look through the history of the videos and check it out. It's like a 15-20 minute intro, and I also show like images, pages of Flash Gordon and Alex Raymond's beautiful work, who John Buscema was influenced by, and as well as George Lucas, he was influenced by Alex Raymond as well. And something I mentioned in the stream as well is I think it's just kind of funny how my eye gravitated. Like, I didn't know when I was in a comic book shop, I didn't know that Alex Raymond influenced John Buscema, but I was very well aware of John Buscema. I already had a lot of his collections. I already had a large collection of his comic books, so I didn't know that, and it's just something that I discovered after reading more about Alex Raymond. But my eye just gravitated towards his anatomy, towards how well he drew the figure, and just beautiful work in general. So I thought it was just kind of interesting how it connected me to one of my favorite artists as well. And this is what I'm talking about, actually. This is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about drawing comics. Like, as I'm drawing this tree, I'm like, yeah, I could have drawn the exterior of it, but they're just like little details. How do you make it look more like a tree? You know, what little details can you put in there to bring it out more? I mean, so far so good. It's not too bad. It did heavily depend on me pressing kind of hard to get thinner lines. Because, let's face it, at this range, at this distance, thin lines really do well. Gave this a little too much bulk. You can draw these vultures. It's so funny. It's so interesting that it's like, if you really look at it, right, like you look at the little detail there. Try to bring it up to you guys real close. It's just a brush stroke. It doesn't even, like, just because there's a slight indentation in that curve and just the connection between, like, I guess to this drawing right here, right, because it's drawn out more and you could see wings. Just because that's there, everything else makes sense. I think that's just really fascinating. Simple things like that just create this illusion in our minds. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a flying bird. But really, it's just the Funny little line. And already it just adds so much atmosphere. You know, before, when I didn't draw these little feathered friends, it just didn't, it looked so much more stark. But once I started to draw them in, it's like, it gave this like menacing sort of vibe already. I see this is frustrating. This is why that little corner is so important. Kind of displeased with that. Gonna work just a little bit longer because I do like the lines that I see on the ground. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm never gonna, I don't think of like making these kind of lines at the moment. Like there's like slight little wiggles there just to show that it's not a smooth surface. It's the desert, you know, there's like rocks and sand and gravel all around. So I really like how he made these suggestions. Like, yeah, this is a rocky area. Giving the pencil a death grip right now because I'm like challenged by all these pencils, all these lines, these pencil lines. I'm like, I really want to nail down exactly how he does it. And it's just so fascinating to me that he, all these little details, all these lines, just came straight from his imagination. And he produced 2 issues a month, working from his imagination, creating all these panels. That's 60 pages of just straight imaginative work. Per month. Now I'm kind of like doing more. I'm doing the inking and the coloring. Whereas, inkers take care of some of the brunt work there. But even then, he still wanted to ink his own work. Supposedly, he was unsatisfied with a lot of the inkers, aside from his brother. Brother Sal Buscema was also a comic book artist. I'm sure he got precious about his work too, and he like suspected some people of trying to like sabotage his work, you know, because he was just like, oh, you're just jealous. Maybe he got paranoid about it. Maybe that's why he was like, I don't like this work. When really it's just they weren't really that good. It could be just a mix of things, or it could be that he just didn't like the inks. Not necessarily for any other reason than the inker is just not being in sync with his work and how he envisions it. All right, ladies and gents, this is going to be it for the Drawing Comics stream. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Both go a long way. Check out the social media, post any questions, comments you got, and I'll write you back. I'll talk to you in the next stream. Stick around for today's later. I mean, you don't have to actually wait until then, but later on, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be streaming the project stream, followed by Coloring Comics at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, where I'll be coming back to John Buscema's work to do some watercolors, or possibly inking. I don't know. I'm still trying to decide between that. But yeah, tune back in then. and I'll see you soon.